Hello, my spookies. It's your host and narrator Henrique Couto here, with yet another holiday present for you all in the form of a 7-story marathon, guaranteed to give you a very scary Christmas. Stories about killer Santa Clauses, ghosts at Christmas Eve, and so much more. So, get comfortable. Put another log on the fire. Not just to stay warm, but to keep jolly old maniac St. Nicholas out of your home, at least for a few hours. And make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcasting app, because we have so very many scares left to give you. Not just for Christmas, but the rest of the year as well. But now, I have a hankering for some Christmas cranberries. Christmas Cranberries by L.F. Falconer. Ronnie was no longer content with pulling the legs off of crickets. That bored him anymore. As did wingless dragonflies and tailless lizards. So today, it was Fluffy, the long-haired tabby with the blue collar that jingled softly with the cat's subtle movements. To protect the birds, Fluffy's owner, Mrs. Kent, from the neighboring house was often known to say. Fluffy was Mrs. Kent's favorite, and Ronnie did not like Mrs. Kent, for Mrs. Kent was mean. Her mouth was always turned down in a frown, and her eyes glinted like a pirate's. She never missed the opportunity to complain to Ronnie's mom when he'd picked the apples from Mrs. Kent's tree off the single branch that overhung the back fence, and she refused to return any balls that accidentally ended up in her yard. Yes, Mrs. Kent was a mean old biddy, so this day, Ronnie thought, when he caught Fluffy trespassing, was to be Fluffy's last. Ronnie's eyes gleamed as he firmly held the writhing cat beneath the water of his wading pool. He imagined the cat to be Mrs. Kent as he kept holding her down, tighter and tighter, until she was quite dead beneath the shallow water. He smiled. A sweet tang like cranberries filled his mouth. He savored the taste as he shoved the wet, dead cat into a garbage bag and stuffed it into the trash can in the alley. For a long time, Ronnie stared at the trash can, reveling in satisfaction, relishing the taste of cranberries. In all of his 6 years of life, he could never remember feeling so good. That was in June. By the 1st of September, just 1 week before his 7th birthday, Ronnie was beginning to hunger with the need to feel good again. He began to crave the cranberries. For his birthday, his father brought home the puppy, a happy 8-week-old lab border collie mix. At his mother's suggestion, the boy named the dog Susie, and within a few days, Susie was fetching the ball Ronnie would toss. Very few were lost to Mrs. Kent's yard anymore. At night, Susie would curl up in her crate at the footboard of Ronnie's bed, and she rarely woke before daylight. In the morning, she would follow Ronnie like a shadow, and wait patiently outside the closed bathroom door until he would let her out in the backyard to tend to her own duties. When Ronnie would come home from school, Susie would brim with joy and exuberance, wagging her entire hindquarters. 4 weeks after Ronnie's birthday, Susie disappeared. Ronnie knew where the dog had gone. Though Susie had done nothing to set Ronnie into a fit of anger, the boy had simply wanted to feel good. He had been hungry. He'd wanted to taste the cranberries. He had taken his father's claw hammer out of the garage. He'd bashed it against Susie's head. He'd bashed again and again, each blow feeding his hunger, filling his mouth with tang until cranberry drool overflowed and dribbled onto his chin. The hunger was sated. He'd tossed the hammer behind the rose bush, unlatched the alley gate, and shoved Susie's little body into a box in Mr. Phipps's trash can at the end of the block. He would be full for a while. Ronnie felt good. Ronnie's mother and father posted the reward flyers around the neighborhood in hopes of inducing the return of the missing pup. 5 days after he'd put them up, Ronnie's dad took the flyers down, even though the lost puppy had not been found. A week before Halloween, Ronnie was blessed with a new sister. His mother had gone to the hospital and came home 2 days later with baby Elizabeth wrapped in her arms. Grandma Rose and Grandpa Sig and Grandpa Paul all came for the Thanksgiving holiday dinner with much fuss and ado over baby Elizabeth. Grandma Rose clicked her favorite photo, so she said, of a smiling Ronnie lovingly holding his new 1-month-old sister in his arms. Little did Grandma Rose know that when she posed the children for that shot, how hungry Ronnie was growing. How Ronnie's bright smile was merely instigated by his inner anticipation and his knowledge of how to feel good, how to taste more cranberries. He tried to fill his hunger at the Thanksgiving feast, but the ones from the can were too sweet. They weren't the same. They did not make him feel good. After dinner, the women gathered in the kitchen for the cleanup, and the men retired to the living room in front of the TV. "So, Ronnie," Grandpa Paul asked as he settled upon the sofa, "what do you want Santa to bring you for Christmas this year?" Ronnie scooted forward in his seat. A baseball bat would be nice. He had no desire for a ball or a glove. A shiny red baseball bat. Red. Like cranberries. His grin was as wide as his eyes. It made Grandpa Paul smile. "I always loved baseball as a boy," Grandpa Sig said, loosening his tie. Grandpa Sig always wore a tie. "You never know when you'll need to make a good impression," he always said. Ronnie's dad, Jim, leaned back in his recliner. Santa might not come this year. "Why not, Jimmy?" Grandpa Sig asked. "He's not short of cash, is he?" "No, but sometimes it's just best if he stays away." Ronnie's dad muted the TV and set the remote aside. "Dad, why don't you tell Ronnie about the Santa you knew as a boy?" "Are you sure?" Grandpa Sig ran his tie back and forth through his fingers. "Times are different, and here in America, Santa Claus has changed his M.O. a little." "He's changed his M.O. a lot, Dad. So indulge me and help me teach the boy a little folklore from his heritage. My Ronnie's old enough to know there's more than one Santa in the world." He looked over at his son and winked. "Aren't you, son?" Ronnie sat up proudly. "Yes, I am." And the boy listened in rapt awe as his father's father began the tale. "Well, here in America, Santa Claus might come accompanied by a red-nosed reindeer," Grandpa Sig intoned. "But back where I come from, Santa, or Sammy Claus, as he's known, makes his rounds with Schmutzi." Ronnie giggled at the sound of the name, spoken in his grandfather's residual German accent. "Is that a Swiss reindeer?" he asked. Grandpa Sig shook his head solemnly. "No, Schmutzi is Sammy Claus' evil altar. While Sammy Claus wears a red cloak and a tall red hat, Schmutzi dresses in sooty gray. Sammy Claus has a long white beard, and Schmutzi is black as coal. Schmutzli's face, too, is black as an inkwell, and his eyes glow red as embers in a fire. Samichlaus leaves treats in the shoes of good little children, while Schmutzli beats the naughty children with his broom. And with those boys and girls who've been truly, truly bad, he sweeps them into his sack and spirits them away deep into the wilderness to be eaten and never seen again. Ronnie stared, wide-eyed. "Why are you telling the boy that horrible tale?" Grandma Rose asked, coming out of the kitchen with a handful of fresh-washed china for the cabinet. "There's nothing wrong with Ronnie knowing the folklore of his heritage, Mom," Jim said. "After all, I grew up with it, and look how sane I turned out." "Well, I didn't approve of your father telling you those stories then, and I don't approve of you scaring my grandson with them now." "It's too late," Jim said, reaching for the TV remote. "The tale of Schmultzy has been told." "I'm not scared, Grandma," Ronnie lied. "After all, this is America. Santa's changed his M.O. Grandpa Sig and Grandpa Paul both laughed. Grandma Rose shook her head and returned to the kitchen. Ronnie stared at the TV. The sound was reinstated, but Ronnie didn't hear it. All that filled his mind was the picture of glowing red eyes on a black face, and the hunger for cranberries faded into the background.
Don't go away. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
When Ronnie relayed the story of Samichlaus and Schmultzy to his friend Jason at school, Jason just laughed. "It's not real," Jason said. "There's no such thing as Santa anyway. It's only your parents." And that is what Ronnie wanted to believe. Or at least that in America there was Santa, not Samichlaus. And certainly no Schmultzy. And maybe he hadn't been that naughty, though he wanted to be. He was craving the cranberries. But it would have to wait. He couldn't take any chances before Christmas. 2 days before Christmas, Ronnie watched, licking the taste of cranberries on his lips as his mother bathed baby Elizabeth in the infant's tub upon the tabletop. "Can I help?" he tentatively asked. After a moment's consideration, Mother nodded. "Of course, Ronnie." She handed the boy the soft washcloth when he stepped close. "Just gently wash her body, okay?" Mother held Elizabeth securely in the tub. Ronnie rubbed the cloth over the baby's soft shoulders and belly, and imagined grabbing hold of the baby's ankles, whirling her around and flinging her against the wall, then jumping up and down on her body once she hit the floor. He imagined skewering her with the fireplace poker and roasting her like a marshmallow. He imagined taking his fingers and poking them into Elizabeth's wide blue eyes and cramming the soaking wet washcloth down her throat. He licked the tang of cranberries away. "Here," Mother interrupted his thoughts. "Hold her steady for me while I lay out the towel." Ronnie's hands replaced his mother's beneath Elizabeth's arms. He looked up into his mother's eyes. They were smiling. The tang in his mouth sweetened. Mother leaned over to unfold the towel beside the infant's tub. Ronnie began to release his grip. Elizabeth slipped a bit. Could she slide all the way down until she drowned? Ronnie wondered. Not likely, but perhaps she could slip fast enough that were he to try to catch hold of her again, her tiny little neck might snap in the process. Her tiny little neck, so skinny in its frailty, trying to hold up her big, bobbling head. And maybe her big, bobbling head just might pop right off in his hands. Pop! The cranberry tang caused a slip of drool to dampen Ronnie's chin. His eyes grew wide as he stared at his sister. He let go his grip. Elizabeth started to slide. "Whoa!" Mother quickly caught the baby before she slipped into the shallow water and laughed nervously. She can be a little wiggle bug, can't she? Almost got away from you. You have to be more careful with your sister, Ronnie. His father spoke from the doorway as he entered the room. Yes, Ronnie agreed, taking a step back, relieved Mother had been so quick. Christmas was close. He couldn't be naughty before Santa came. But afterwards, he could feel good again. On Christmas Eve, he could not sleep. His stocking was hung, but would it be filled? Was Santa real? Would he come? And what about Schmaltzy? But this was America. Of course Santa would come. Santa and a red-nosed reindeer to leave presents under the tree. Not red-eyed Schmutzli. He had been being so very good, even though the hunger for cranberries was unendurably strong. Elizabeth was sleeping in her room across the hall. Mother and Father were sleeping in their room at the end of the hall. Ronnie stared out the dark window to the starlit night beyond. "Please let Santa come," he whispered. He only had to wait until after Santa came. He couldn't be bad before Santa came, but afterwards, everything would be all right, and he could feel good again. After all, this was America, and in America, Santa wanted little boys to feel good. Santa rewarded good with presents. Ronnie stared at his bedroom door. Elizabeth was across the hall. Mother and Father were at the end of the hall. At the other end of the hall, around the corner in the living room, the brightly lit Christmas tree cheerfully winked, awaiting its yearly night-stalking visitor. Every year it was Santa who came, not Santa Claus, not Schmaltzy. This was America. Ronnie pulled the blanket up to his chin and stared out the dark window. The tang was in his mouth. He just wanted to feel good. That's all. He didn't want to be naughty. And there was only one way to feel good. And here in America, Santa brought presents to the good. Maybe even a baseball bat, bright, shiny, and red. Thunk. He could hear the metallic sound of the bat's impact. Thunk, thunk. Hollow and resonant. Red, gleaming, slick. Gosh, he was so hungry. He wanted to feel good for Santa. Elizabeth was across the hall. He sat up in bed and stared at the door. Was there truly a Santa? If so, was he American? Or was he Swiss? And had he come yet? Ronnie laid back down. It was getting hard to breathe. His mouth was full. He needed to feel good. When would Santa come so he could feel good? He needed to know Santa had come before he could feel good. He sat back up and dangled his feet over the side of the bed. He stared at the door. Elizabeth was across the hall. Had Santa come yet? Ronnie was so very hungry, starving. He could taste the cranberries. He needed to feel good. Bare feet hit the floor. He crept to the bedroom door, peeked into the hall, looked to his parents' closed bedroom door, then to Elizabeth's. His hands began to sweat. Ronnie eased his way into the hall without squeaking the door hinges and padded for the living room. He peeped around the corner into the room, awash with twinkling colored lights, and gasped. Santa was real. He had come. The stockings were bulging, filled to the brim. Beneath the tree, under a big green bow, was a shimmering red baseball bat, the color of cranberries. He crouched to his hands and knees and crawled for the tree. Hesitantly, his hand touched the cold aluminum that gleamed beneath a barrage of twinkling lights. He slowly lifted it up and gave the bat a loving caress. In America, Santa wanted little boys to feel good. In America, Santa rewarded the good. He rewarded the good with shiny aluminum baseball bats to enable the good never to stop. Ronnie wanted to feel good. He had waited for so long. The sweet tang of cranberries filled his mouth as he hugged the red baseball bat and eased back down the hall. Turning the knob to Elizabeth's bedroom door, he gently pushed it open. He stepped inside. Thunk, thunk, thunk. In a gleam of red, the bat hit the floor. The flyer Ronnie's father tacked to the electric pole featured the smiling face of a 7-year-old boy. A reward was being offered for any information leading to the missing boy's whereabouts. But Jim knew no reward would ever be paid out. Jim knew Ronnie had been a bad boy. Jim had found the bloody hammer, matted with dog hair and gore. He knew Ronnie had lied about the puppy running off through the open gate, and Jim feared what Ronnie would do with a shiny new baseball bat. Yes, Ronnie was certainly a very bad boy, and very bad boys had to be whisked away forever. The Naughty List by Keith Tomlin. Andy Price, 12 years old, went to sleep on Christmas Eve in a dry, warm bed in the St. Luke's Home for Wayward Youth, and woke up on a cold, damp stone floor. He groggily sat up and looked around the large chamber. A dozen other kids about his age were also waking up, each looking about with the same dazed and confused look that he had. There were 3 girls and 10 boys, including Andy, all wearing their night clothes. Andy stumbled to his feet, reaching out to the nearby wall to steady himself. The wall felt cold against his bare hand. He looked closer, and it seemed that the walls, and even the ceiling, were made from ice. A dim luminescence emitted from the ice, creating a soft light that lit the entire chamber. Each wall of the square room had tunnels that led off of it, and the tall ceiling had a large circular hole in the middle. Some kids began milling about, exploring the cavern and looking down the corridors. Others remained seated on the floor, unable to believe what their eyes were telling them. Andy stood apart against the wall and studied the other kids. He knew that knowledge was power, and he wanted to gain as much information as possible to ensure that he would, as always, come out on top. As he studied the kids, he began to sort them into categories. Are they weak or strong? Are they a threat? Can he manipulate them into doing what he wants? How can he use them to ensure that he will win whatever sick and twisted game this was? All of this came to Andy as naturally as breathing. He always got what he wanted, and nothing stood in his way. No teachers, no laws, not even his parents. Andy was born to Greg and Mary Price, a young couple living in Chicago. Greg was a junior architect and Mary was a kindergarten teacher. They had met in a Bible study class and soon fell in love. They married and, within a year, Mary gave birth to their first child, Andrew, or Andy, as he was lovingly called. He was a perfect baby, never crying, never raising a fuss. When he was 8, and small pets and animals started disappearing around the neighborhood. No one suspected the quiet Price kid. They put the disappearances down to rumors of coyotes roaming the Chicago suburbs. When Andy was 10 and bigger pets began disappearing, some neighbors did begin to point fingers at that odd Price child who always seemed to be watching them with a hint of a knowing smile on his young face. His parents never suspected their son was anything but a perfect little angel, at least not until they brought home their second child, Susan, when Andy was 11. Little accidents began to happen to the baby. Mysterious bruises appeared, and they twice found the baby choking, having somehow swallowed a marble and a coin. The final incident was when the crib tipped over during the night, and the resulting injury required Susan to have surgery. When his parents began to suspect that Andy may be behind these accidents, an electrical outlet started a fire that only Andy survived. Loud, eerie music reminiscent of the tune you would hear from a Jack-in-the-Box toy began drifting down from the hole in the ceiling. It slowly increased in volume until it shook the walls. This went on for so long that Andy thought his eardrums would shatter. He pressed his palms against his ears and fell to the floor, screaming for it to stop. And suddenly, it did. A few heartbeats later, a high-pitched voice began reciting a poem in a hypnotic, sing-song voice. Judgment passed, trial done, judged naughty every one. No games, no rules, no referee. 2 choices, fight or flee. Survive the night, only 2 ways. Kill the monster or escape the maze. The voice stopped, but the echoes rang along the corridors for minutes before finally fading away. Andy struggled to his feet as a grinding sound, like an old, rusty gate being opened, shook the room. Seconds later, a massive creature dropped from the hole, landing heavily on the floor. The creature stood up straight, twice as tall as Andy. It had an ape-like body that was covered with long white fur. It roared, opening its oversized mouth to reveal rows of razor-sharp teeth. The creature's long arms flexed as its powerful muscles rippled beneath the long hair. Each hand had long fingers that were tipped with wickedly sharp claws. The creature slowly swiveled its massive head to survey its surroundings. Most of the children who had been shocked by the reveal of the monster snapped to life and began running for the nearest tunnel. This seemed to amuse the creature, and it threw back its head and roared again, this time in anticipation of the hunt. When the creature first appeared, Andy had slid along the wall and ducked into a side passage. He peered out around the corner and watched the chamber quickly empty of children, except for 2. One of the younger-looking kids, a petite girl dressed in a pink nightgown, had curled into a ball on the ground and kept repeating, "This is not happening," over and over again. The other kid, a red-haired boy, stood pressed against the wall, his face filled with horror and disbelief. A large wet stain had appeared on his Marvel superhero pajama bottoms, running from his crotch to his ankles. The creature clicked his tongue as it walked over to the boy that was standing. It seemed to smile as it gently reached out one claw hand and slowly wrapped it around the boy's chest. It pulled him close and stared in his eyes before it raised his other hand and flicked a finger out, slicing the boy's throat. It seized the boy's head in its free hand and bent it back like snapping open a pixie stick. It raised the child above his head and let the blood flow into its mouth, blood splattering all over the creature's face and chest. When the blood stopped, the creature flung the lifeless body across the cavern. As the creature turned to face the girl on the ground, she began chanting, "This is not happening," louder and more frantic. The creature's arm shot out and grabbed her by the ankle. In one smooth motion, it whipped its arm around, slamming the girl's head into the wall. It split open and splattered blood, bone, and brains all over the room. As the creature began to feed, Andy's mind raced, searching for possibilities of how to control the situation. He had always known what to say and do to ensure that he got what he wanted. Now his mind came back with nothing except panic. This was new to him. Andy had never before tasted fear. He turned and ran. The passages were wide, at least 8 feet across, and not quite as tall as the starting chamber. Side tunnels ran off of this one in seemingly random intervals. Echoes seemed to have a life of their own and reverberated all around Andy. He heard the echo of the girl chanting, "This is not happening," as well as the wet, hollow thunk of her head hitting the ice. He could also hear echoes of something large, moving quickly. Andy felt disoriented and began choosing passages at random, trying to put as much distance between him and that creature as possible. More screams echoed through the halls as the creature found another victim. After a few minutes, Andy paused, gasping for breath. As he looked down a side tunnel, he noticed that it opened up into a room.
Shh, it was only the wind. You're safe. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
He skulked along that corridor and peered around the corner. The room was large and had ceilings as tall as the first chamber. Along the far wall was a wooden rack with metal items arrayed along its length. It took Andy a moment to realize what was on the rack. "Swords?" Andy whispered. As Andy took a few steps forward, a boy dressed in Transformers pajamas charged into the room. "Run! It's coming!" he yelled. Once again, Andy turned and ran. Andy didn't know how long he ran. It seemed like days. He heard screams echoing all around him. Unclear if they were old screams echoing their way back around, or new ones. He ran out of one tunnel into a larger corridor and had to immediately duck as the largest of the children tried to take his head off with a sword. "You stay away! I don't trust you, and I'll kill anyone that gets too close to me!" the boy screamed, swinging his sword in the air as he backed away from Andy. He moved past a side tunnel when a blur of white sprang out of it. The creature leaped at the boy, pinning him to the ground. It began to tear limbs off the large boy like a child might wings off a fly. Andy ran. After a few minutes, Andy ran into a chamber with 4 children standing in a semicircle, each holding a short spear. The tallest of the kids pointed to a wooden rack of spears behind them, saying, "Hey kid, grab a weapon. We're gonna kill that damn thing." Andy ran to the rack and snatched one up. Nodding at the tall boy, he walked over to the left side of the phalanx, making sure he was closest to the exit. The kids stood at the ready, watching for the creature. As ready as they were, the attack happened so quickly, only the tall kid was able to bring his spear up to attack. The creature burst out of the tunnel that Andy had come through and smashed into the circle of kids. Tall kid was able to put a spear in the side of the creature, but the powerful beast barely noticed. The creature knocked over 2 defenders with one powerful blow and grabbed tall kid in the other hand. Andy turned and ran. Panting with effort, Andy ran as fast as he could. Looking back, he saw one of the other defenders, a young girl with long hair wearing sweatpants and a shirt with a peace sign. She ran up alongside him, matching his speed, and gave a small nod. Andy nodded back. They ran together for a few seconds before he heard the creature roar and felt the ground shake as the beast pursued them. Andy didn't dare look, but he could tell the creature was gaining fast. The girl gave him another quick look and a shrug as she increased her speed and began to pull away from him. Andy tried to dig deeper, but he had nothing left. The creature was getting closer, and he was running out of options. He then realized that he was still holding the spear. His mind started to race through the potentials. Attacking the creature with it would do nothing except get him killed. He could drop it and hope that it increases his speed. Or, as soon as his mind came up with the third possibility, he acted without even fully realizing what he was going to do. He thrust the spear forward as he ran, and just barely, he was able to catch the girl in the back of her thigh with the tip. It wasn't a deep wound, but it was just enough to make her stumble and fall. He ran past without looking down at her. A few strides later, her scream and the sound of snapping bones echoed in the hallway. The passageway led to another room. Andy ran into it and stopped for a second to catch his breath. He felt the ground shake and knew the creature was making its way down the hall towards him. Just as Andy was about to run down another passageway, the kid with the Transformer pajamas came stumbling into the room. He held a wounded arm and was panting heavily. "Hey, kid," Andy said. "I owe you one from earlier. This way is safe. I'll catch up to you in a second. I just need to catch my breath." Andy pointed back the way he just came. "Thanks," the Transformer kid said as he started moving down the corridor that Andy just exited. As Andy turned down another passage, he smiled as he heard screams and a beastly roar of triumph. Minutes or maybe hours later, Andy was cold to the bone and could not control his shivering, but he kept running. His feet were leaving bloody footprints with every step, but he was numb to that, as he was numb to everything else. He ran without thinking, letting his subconscious guide him through the maze. After an incalculable amount of time, he entered into a large oval room, bigger than any other he had seen so far. He slowed down as he noticed that there were no other corridors leading off of this room. As he walked further into the massive chamber, he noticed a door at the far end. Andy approached the door. A painted sign that hung over it had a single word written: "Exit." Andy reached out and placed his hand on the wood of the door. It felt real. A tear ran down Andy's cheek as he realized that this was not an illusion. He slowly turned the door handle, and the door clicked and began to open. A sharp, icy breeze blew in from the outside, and Andy started to take a step forward to cross the threshold. He suddenly stopped when he noticed shapes in the darkness outside. Dozens and dozens of little humanoid creatures stood around the outside of the exit door. Andy could feel all of their eyes on him. "Is this a trick?" Andy yelled at them, but did not get a reply. Andy tried to think, to push back the fog and fatigue that clouded his mind. Shaking his head, Andy realized that there was only one choice, and started, once again, to step through the door. As he lifted his foot, a powerful hand grabbed him around his waist and lifted him in the air. He was spun around to face the creature, its black eyes drilled into his mind, his soul. It seemed to smile as it drew him closer. The thing opened its mouth and with a deep rumble croaked out a single word.
"Naughty."
That was the last thing that Andy heard before the creature's teeth tore his head from his body. The creature greedily fed and tossed the corpse behind him as it started to move back into the bowels of the maze. As Andy's lifeless body hit the floor, the sound of bells echoed through the maze. The creature grabbed its massive head and fell to the floor. As it slumped over, the little humanoid creatures began to flood into the room. These little creatures, known to some as elves, formed a circle around the fallen monster. When the bells stopped ringing, the elves began to chant in their high-pitched voices, chanting ancient and powerful words long forgotten by humanity. As the chanting grew louder, the white fur that covered the creature's body began to turn black and crumble into ash. Its bare skin started to smoke, giving off waves of intense heat. The skin rippled and pulsated and soon began to flow like lava, forming a mound on the floor. As the mound cooled, the skin hardened into a shell, into a cocoon. As one, the elves stopped their chant. They stood silent and unmoving, watching the cocoon in awe. The minutes stretched on. The silence in the chamber was deafening until suddenly a large crack echoed throughout the room as the cocoon split open on top. The elves sprang into motion. Most of the elves clapped, cheered, and danced. A few ran forward with small hammers and chisels and delicately began to chip away at the shell of the cocoon, reverently handling every small piece they chipped off to the other elves, who carefully carried it through the exit door. After minutes of chiseling, the side of the cocoon burst open, spilling its contents onto the stone floor. Gallons of thick, greenish-yellow liquid poured from the hole, and, with a splash, a tall, rotund man with a long, white beard slid from the cocoon onto the floor. A large group of elves rushed forward, some cleaning up the liquid with towels, others gently wrapping the man in heavy blankets and carrying him out into the cold, dark night. Santa Claus opened his eyes and looked around the room, stifling a yawn. His face turned from confusion to concern when he noticed that the room was filled with his little helpers. "Why, hello everyone. Is something wrong?" Santa said in his deep, booming voice, his hand stroking his long white beard. One elf stepped forward and gave a small bow. In a high-pitched, squeaky tone, he said, "We're sorry to wake you, Santa, but it's Christmas Eve and—" "Christmas Eve?" Santa interrupted. He leapt out of bed, almost knocking over a score of elves. "I overslept again! Prepare the sled, gather the gifts. I have millions of good little boys and girls to visit tonight." The elves cheered as Santa grabbed his black boots off the floor and rushed out of the room. The elves kept cheering as they followed Santa out of the bedroom. All except one. This elf walked over to a small writing desk and sat down. He removed a quill pen and a parchment from a drawer. Dipping the pen into an inkwell, he wrote, "Naughty," across the top of the paper in a smooth, elegant font. He then drew 13 lines underneath it. He put the pen down and sat there, waiting for the new list of naughty boys and girls for next Christmas Eve. Lady Frankenstein by Rob Fields. December 23rd was the absolute biggest Christmas shopping day in Strickfield. Usually, most everyone was out shopping. Strickfield Town Center Mall was even packed, the one season of the year when it usually was. However, there was one person who had other plans during the holiday season. Just outside the village limits, in an old mansion that was thought to be abandoned, Vincent Frankenstein was alone in a third-floor laboratory and working on an experiment that was on a large slab. He had just finished affixing the hands to the lifeless female body. As he admired his work, he knew that his female creation would correct many of the flaws that had plagued his ancestor, Henry Frankenstein, many years ago. After finding Henry's thought-to-be-lost journals and studying them over immensely. Vincent had started work on trying to rediscover and harness that great ultraviolet ray that was said to have brought life to all things living. Vincent's first experiment was on a cat that had been hit by a car. Vincent fixed the body up as best he could. He achieved success in turning the ray on the cat and restoring life to it. After he had performed many tests on it, the cat had not shown any hostile tendencies. In fact, it acted as if it had never died, and even took nourishment upon its rebirth. Vincent had succeeded in restoring a dog to life with the same results. One experiment after another, Vincent would continue his research until he was absolutely certain that his updated process worked flawlessly. Once he felt that he had compiled enough data, he decided that he would do what Henry had accomplished on 2 occasions, to create a human being from dead parts and endow the amalgamation with life. Like his great ancestor before him, he secured fresh body parts for his creation anywhere he could obtain them. It had taken Vincent a great deal of time and a lot of preservation, but he had nearly completed a female body. All that was missing was a perfect head, and this part was where Vincent would exercise the utmost caution, for he remembered that Henry's first creation had turned out for the worst. Henry had unknowingly placed the brain of a dead criminal within the head of what became known as Frankenstein's monster, or simply just Frankenstein. Yes, Henry's first creation had killed many people, including a little girl who was playing by the water near her village. Vincent could not allow such a mistake to be made a second time. Henry had also recorded in another journal that he, with the help of one Dr. Septimus Pretorius, had created a female of his own, to be a companion and mate for the original creation. However, the female creation had come to reject her potential mate and was believed to be destroyed in an explosion. Vincent had thought ahead and removed his creation's reproductive system to make her sterile so that his creation could not produce potentially dangerous offspring. Vincent had read in Strickfield's local newspaper that a young woman from North Ridgeway had recently passed away due to an extreme loss of blood. He was certain that the head would be in great physical condition and would be perfect for his creation. That night, he had gone to North Ridgeway Memorial Hospital. After disengaging the security cameras, Vincent made his way to the morgue and found the naked female body with his perfect head. When Vincent thoroughly examined the body of Annabeth Winters, he couldn't understand what had caused this once-living beautiful girl to die from such an extreme loss of blood. His research on Annabeth Winters showed that she had been a top-level athlete from North Ridgeway University, so she was not a dangerous criminal. Vincent's creation would have the perfect head and brain of Annabeth Winters. It had taken Vincent a great deal of time to properly attach the spinal cord to the brain of Annabeth Winters. Upon successful completion, he stitched the flesh together to finish making the head a part of the body. Vincent hooked up the completed body to the multiple machines to both inject and conduct the circulation of blood. All he needed now was the perfect storm to grant him that one jolt of powerful lightning in conjunction with his ultraviolet ray to bring his creation to life. His Christmas wish couldn't have been granted soon enough. This Christmas season just happened to be unseasonably warm, guaranteeing a green holiday. Vincent heard the loud rumbling and knew that he needed to act quickly. After he finished wrapping the body in special bandages to help evenly distribute the forthcoming electrical current, all was ready. He threw the switches to both open the panel in the roof and send the body upward until it was outside and exposed to the storm. Vincent monitored his instruments closely. When the needles and digital displays spiked in their readings, he knew that the lightning had struck the rods at each corner of the slab and had sent millions of volts throughout the body, in conjunction with the ultraviolet ray that he had mounted just above. Vincent brought the body back down, closing the roof panel. When the slab was back on the floor again, Vincent waited for any sign of movement. He didn't have to wait long when a hand started to move. "It's alive!" he gasped. "It's alive! My God! I've succeeded!" He took his scissors and proceeded to cut the wrappings to reveal the creation's head. Then he cut the wrappings to reveal her hands and feet. It struck him odd that the creation's stitched areas were quickly healing up into a single unified flesh. He heard his creation moaning and knew that she was scared. He looked into the beautiful face of his creation. "It's all right. You're going to be just fine. I'll take very good care of you." The creation regarded her creator for a moment and screamed. Then she started heaving. Vincent saw that his creation was angry now. Very angry. She screamed again to show her rage. Then Vincent noticed that the creation's eyes were glowing red. It was during her third scream, one for freedom, that she broke the iron shackles that had secured her wrists and ankles to the slab. "No! Stop!" Vincent held out his hands to try to take hold of her, to calm her down. The creation quickly grabbed a heavy table nearby and flung it at her creator. He ducked to avoid serious injury. When Vincent got to his feet, the creation screamed with rage again. Seeing the door to her right, she proceeded to walk to it. To her freedom. "Stop!" Vincent yelled at her. When the creation had reached the door, she found it was locked. She smashed her fists through the thick wooden door as if it were brittle. It was then when Vincent saw the full-length mirror near the control panel. The creature had no reflection. It was then that Vincent Frankenstein had gotten his answer as to why the body of Annabeth Winters was in such good condition in spite of a loss of blood. The young woman had been sired by a vampire. In utilizing her head, Vincent had made an even worse mistake than what Henry before him had made. No, he had not given his creation the brain of a dead criminal. He had given his creation the head of a newborn vampire.
You're not safe yet. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
The creation easily smashed through the French doors and walked down the steps to the front yard to continue her escape. The rain poured on her seemingly mummified body. The creation relished her freedom in spite of the weather. She came to a dirt path and walked it for several minutes before she arrived at a road. Seeing a sign with an arrow that pointed left, she turned in that direction and headed to Strickfield. The roads were deserted as she walked to her destination. When she entered the Strickfield village limits, she noticed that every house was bright with Christmas lights and decorations. There were even houses with animatronics doing their programmed actions. As the creation stared at this winter wonderland, she started to become uncomfortable. She growled and clutched her throat. She looked and saw a man working to replace a few bulbs in a string of Christmas lights. She hissed with delight and began to make her way towards the man. When she reached him, the man saw her bare feet and looked up at her bandaged body. "Listen, you! Get the hell off my property!" he grumbled. "Not unless you want me to call the..." The man fought to break her iron grip as she held his coat and hair. She tilted his head back to fully expose his neck before opening her mouth to reveal her sharp fangs. The man screamed as she bit into his neck and began to drink. The creation felt herself becoming stronger and more vibrant with each swallow of blood. When she was finished, she shoved the corpse away from her. The creation heard other sounds nearby, mainly a car engine. She looked and saw the car in another person's yard that had damaged an animatronic Santa Claus. Shortly after, 4 high school kids, 2 boys and 2 girls, got out of the car. One of the girls pointed to the vandalized Santa. "Fuck you, Principal Van Diest." The other girl kicked the Santa head that had fallen at her feet. "Yeah, go get fucked, you motherfucker." One of the guys pointed to the house. "Hey, we should see if Principal Van Diest is home. Then we can smash his door in and kill his ass." The other guy muttered, "I can't believe that son of a bitch expelled us from high school, just because Stevie tripped little Aileen Donnerly in the hallway yesterday." The girl named Stevie turned and shoved the guy. "And then that fucking bitch Bella Tabon beat the shit out of me for it." "Bella Tabon beat the shit out of all of us," the other girl yelled. "But Principal Van Diest expels us. I say we beat the living shit out of Van Diest. Then we find Bella Tabon and fucking kill her ass too." Stevie slapped the other girl on her arm quickly. "Hey, look!" The 4 of them turned their attention to the creation. One of the guys started laughing when he saw her staring at them from nearby. "Is that bitch dressed up like a mummy?" The other guy yelled to her, "Hey, airhead, Halloween was 2 months ago." "It's not trick-or-treat weekend, bitch," Stevie added. "None of these houses are giving out candy. But we'll beat your fucking ass if you don't fuck off," the other girl further added. When the creation wouldn't walk away, they got back into their car. The guy driving turned the wheel towards the creation and hit the gas. "Yeah, run that fucking bitch over," Stevie yelled. The creation didn't look the least bit afraid. In fact, her eyes glowed hot as she screamed with rage and raised her fists. As the car was about to hit her, the creation brought her fists down on the car's hood and hit it with enough force to both stop the car dead in its tracks and make the rear end go way off-road and slam back down just as hard. The creation moved the vehicle and saw the 4 enemies who had pissed her off. They were moaning in pain. The girls in the back were bleeding from their heads. As for the guys up front, they were both on the hood after crashing through the windshield together. She could smell how delicious the red leaking liquid from their wounds was and grabbed the driver. He screamed as the creation drank him dry. After tossing him aside, she grabbed the other guy and drank him up. That left only the 2 girls now. The creation moved to the passenger side and ripped the door off. She reached inside and pulled the girl next to Stevie out. She held her by her hair with one hand. With the other, she grabbed the neck of her turtleneck sweater. The girl cried out when she felt the creation's fingers pierce her flesh. She screamed as the creation pulled down fast, ripping the front of her turtleneck sweater away past her stomach, tearing all the flesh beyond with it. The creation threw the girl onto her back, leaving her vital organs exposed as blood pooled around the body. Stevie saw this and screamed in terror. The creation heard her and screamed with rage yet again. She moved to the driver's side door and ripped it off, throwing it aside. She reached in and grabbed Stevie. She pulled her out of the car and held her where she stood. "What are you?" Stevie choked out. As the creation moved her hands to the sides of Stevie's head to crush her skull in, she felt 2 sharp jabs on her shoulder blade. She screamed as she felt the voltage go through her entire body, making her release Stevie. When the creation refused to fall, the voltage only seemed to increase. She turned and saw Vincent Frankenstein at the other end of the taser rifle. She grabbed the cables and yanked hard enough to pull the rifle away from him. When the rifle landed in front of her, she stomped on it with one bare foot to snap it in 2. "You are my creation. Stop this at once," Vincent yelled. The creation screamed with rage and stretched her hands out into claws. As she was ready to attack Vincent, they both heard a low moan from Stevie. Seeing that the creation was distracted, Vincent rushed at her and threw his body into her, to knock her down. He moved quickly and lifted Stevie into his arms as the creation suddenly sat up. Vincent ran as fast as he could and through some nearby yards. Fortunately, he knew Strickfield quite well. The creation would not catch him and Stevie so quickly, at least not so long as she hadn't yet understood all of her potential vampiric powers. The creation, frustrated that she had lost her two victims, looked up and screamed so loudly that anything of a fragile nature nearby would either break or crack. When she finished, she turned and continued walking through Strickfield. The next morning, Christmas Eve, the creation awakened and left the abandoned barn that she had taken shelter in. It had finally stopped raining, but it was quite cloudy and chilly. She seemed disoriented at how much more light was outside compared to the darkness of the night before. Just the same, she began to walk again.
I like it spooky. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
The creation would find its way to Strickfield Town Center Mall. The creation walked in and saw that many people were going in and out of the stores or doing business with vendors at kiosks. But what really intrigued her at that moment were the many little versions of the people. As she watched the smaller people move about, her facial expression softened. Until... "Hey, you! You can't be in here without any shoes on! You're gonna have to leave!" The creation glanced to see a fat security guard next to her. She ignored him and started walking again. "Hey!" The guard grumbled and grabbed her arm. The creation screamed in anger before she grabbed him and sank her fangs into his throat, which caused panic among the shoppers who saw. After tossing the body aside, she screamed at the people and went for them. She had killed and drank two more before a little boy had crossed in front of her. The creation picked up the boy. "Stop!" the mother called out. "Please, don't hurt my baby!" The creation looked at the woman only for a moment before returning her attention to the boy. After examining the boy, she finally lowered him and let him go. The mother quickly snatched up her son and ran as fast as she could. Suddenly, two police officers appeared with their guns drawn. The creation screamed at them as they fired at her. To their disbelief, the officers found their bullets were useless. She was on them the moment their guns were empty. After she drained them of their blood, she made her way through the mall. Many families scrambled to flee once they saw her. A few of the boldest dared to try and fight the creation, only for her to drink them up. Another fat security guard tried to take her down, but was quickly and easily thrown with one hand right through the little Santa's house at the center court. It seemed as if the creation would continue her reign of terror at the mall, but she reached the main doors and smashed right through them to finally leave. Some of the police ran after her to try and subdue her, but they would find their efforts to be futile. These officers were most fortunate that the creation only smashed them to the parking lot and left them with their lives. She screamed at them before she turned and continued on her way. Stevie opened her eyes and awoke to find herself covered up in a 4-post bed. She saw that she was wearing a gown and felt that she had a bandage wrapped around her forehead. She felt a little scared as she looked around and wondered where she was. "It's all right," Vincent said to her as he entered the room. "Where the fuck am I?" Stevie demanded. "You're in my home, young lady. I treated your headroom and put you to bed so you could rest." Stevie shrieked and pointed in a random direction. "That thing!" Vincent sighed sadly. "She's still out there, I'm afraid. I went out to try and find her, but was unsuccessful. Stevie understood immediately and pointed an accusing finger at him. You created that motherfucking thing? She sprang out of bed. Fucking why? Vincent held up his hands. I am truly sorry for what she did to you and your friends, and nothing I can do will ever make up for that. I'll have to carry every death she's caused with me for the rest of my life. He lowered his hands and sighed. I only wanted to be able to create life from death the way my ancestor did many, many years ago. Vincent explained everything to Stevie. The more he explained, the more Stevie became furious. She finally screamed at the top of her lungs and lunged at Vincent. She took him down and screamed more as she threw fist after fist at him. Finally, she fell off him and heaved. God damn you! God damn you! Yes, perhaps God himself will damn me to hell for what I've done, Vincent agreed. But I still have to find my creation just the same. But how the fuck will you kill her, asshole? Stevie mocked him. You fucked up by putting the head of a vampire on her. Vincent sat up and faced her. You believe in vampires? Stevie sneered in disgust. I was raped by one and survived. I ended up killing his motherfucking ass after he tried to sire me. She moved onto her knees and glared at Vincent with anticipation. I'm definitely going to help you kill that fucking thing. When Stevie saw that Vincent was apprehensive, she growled and attacked him, getting on top of him again. When he looked up at her, she glared down at him. You listen to me, motherfucker. She pointed in a random direction. That fucking thing killed my friends. It damn near killed me. How many more people do you think she's going to kill right fucking now? Huh? They're all on your fucking head. Okay, Vincent conceded. I was hoping to take her alive so that maybe I can fix her. Stevie got off Vincent and stood up. There is no fixing her. You know it, and I know it. Vincent got up and faced Stevie. I'll get you some fresh clothes, then we'll go look for my creation. Stevie continued to glare at him with distrust as he left her room. The creation walked onto the Strickfield University grounds and looked at the Christmas decorations. She didn't understand why there were so many brightly colored lights, the multiple snowmen, or even the fat men wearing red and white suits. She really didn't understand too much except that people were after her, that she needed to feed on their blood, and that she now felt certain desires growing inside her. The creation continued walking the campus, but she didn't see anybody. Of course, she couldn't have known that nearly every student had left Strickfield University for the holiday break. She screamed in frustration at not getting what she desired. She approached a nearby animatronic Santa Claus and sent its head flying right off its shoulders with a quick punch. She reached inside its open neck to kill it some more. The creation screamed and became angrier as the high voltage surged through her body. She stopped the voltage by ripping the animatronic Santa in half. Jesus Christ! What are you doing? Someone called out to her. The creation was ready to scream at the person, but she quickly stopped and calmed down. She allowed the chunky guy with glasses to approach her. You all right? She didn't answer, but continued to look him over. Wow, you sure are tall. He looked down at her bare feet. And you don't even need heels. Then he saw that her wet bandages had parted enough in several places to reveal that she didn't have any clothing on underneath. At all. Hey, you can't stay out here looking like that. If the police see you... He took her hand. Come on, my house is just over there. I can give you something to wear out of my sister's room. The creation allowed the guy to lead her off campus and to the nearby house where he lived with his family. He brought her inside and took her upstairs to his bedroom. My parents aren't home, but I'll take care of you. Listen, do you have a name? When she still didn't answer him, he pointed to himself. I'm Reggie. Reggie. When she remained silent, he motioned for her to stay. I'll get a scissor and some clothes." The creation waited until Reggie returned with the promised items. He set the clothes on his desk and proceeded to use the scissors to cut off her bandages. After several minutes, he had her completely naked. "You know what? Maybe you should take a shower first," Reggie suggested. The bathroom... The creation seized Reggie and kissed him hungrily. Reggie couldn't believe his luck and kissed her back. She ripped his t-shirt off like it was tissue paper and sat down on the bed. Reggie looked down at the beautiful naked creation who truly desired him. She growled and ripped his jeans open. He eased her onto her back, got naked, and climbed on top of her.
Are you afraid? Good. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
Reggie had finished drying the creation off after giving her a shower. Then he dressed her in his sister's clothing. Even though the items fit, they were still too small for her. The t-shirt revealed her full stomach, and the jeans were more like capris. The creation looked at him and attempted to smile for the first time ever. Then she took his hand and held it between her two hands. She closed her eyes and let him kiss her lips again. He sat down next to her and admired her. "I can't believe we just had sex," Reggie told her. "This sort of thing just doesn't happen to me." The creation smiled for him a second time. Then she quickly turned her head when she heard noises coming from downstairs. "Somebody's home," Reggie explained. "Don't worry, nobody's gonna hurt you." The creation wouldn't release his hand. Only when he assured her that he would return did she let him go. He opened the door and headed downstairs. The creation heard talking, but she couldn't understand the words. It wasn't long after that she heard quick movements on the stairs along with Reggie yelling. Something was wrong. She stood up and moved to the door. She walked right through it, turning it into boards and kindling. She turned to see Vincent Frankenstein and Stevie in the hallway. She screamed angrily and moved at them. "Oh shit," Stevie shrieked. She raised her shotgun and blasted the creation in the shoulder. "No!" Reggie yelled. The creation only jerked back on its impacted shoulder and showed Stevie just how fast she could heal. Stevie and Vincent quickly moved back downstairs. They hadn't counted on the creation leaping all the way down the stairway. Stevie cried out in fright as the creation suddenly grabbed her and put her right through the front door. Then she turned to face Vincent and Reggie. For a moment, she seemed to convey betrayal towards Reggie. When she saw him shaking his head quickly, she realized he was innocent. Her creator and the girl had found her, somehow. Vincent raised his hands in front of him. "Let me take you home. I can fix you. Please, don't be like this. No more killing, please. Just come with me." The creation still didn't understand him, but she screamed with hatred at him. She was about to grab him when she took another shotgun blast, this time in the back. The creation turned to see Stevie. "Come and get me, you fucking bitch," she called out as she turned and ran. The creation screamed and darted outside. It hadn't taken the creation long to almost be upon Stevie. Suddenly she felt Vincent jumping onto her back. As she was about to grab him, she felt the sharpness of a needle going into her shoulder, followed by something squirting out. Vincent dropped off her back and stuck her with a second needle. The creation fell to her knees and then onto her side. "We don't have much time, Stevie. Let's get her back to the lab," Vincent said. "I can't believe I'm agreeing to let you try and fix her," Stevie muttered. "You should just fucking kill her." When Stevie saw Reggie coming outside, she pointed right at him. "Shut the fuck up and get back inside, you fucking fat fuckstick." "What are you going to do with her?" he demanded. When Stevie raised the shotgun to him and pumped it, he quickly squealed and darted back inside. The creation opened her eyes and felt as if she was moving, yet she found she was incapacitated. She looked up and saw the sky was moving fast. She clenched her teeth and found the chain securing her wouldn't give. She growled through her teeth as she exerted her strength again. This time, the chains broke in several places. She moved to her feet and leapt from the pickup truck. As soon as she landed on her bare feet, she heard the truck brake to a halt. Vincent and Stevie got out. The creation looked at them and screamed the loudest she had ever screamed. The two of them tried to get back into the truck, but the creation moved to it quickly. She easily lifted the truck and threw it right off the side of the bridge they were on. The truck soon made a huge splash in the Castalia River, where the raging waters would carry it away. Vincent and Stevie turned to run, but the creation only had to leap to catch them. She backed them up to the edge of the bridge. It would take a combined, desperate attempt for them to survive. As Vincent injected the creation with his last 2 tranquilizers, and Stevie placed her shotgun under the creation's chin and blasted the top of her head off. The creation staggered back and fell off the side of the bridge. She dropped into the Castalia River, where the raging waters quickly carried her body away. "You think we stopped her?" Stevie asked quickly. Vincent sighed. "I don't know. I just don't know." On Christmas morning, the creation had awakened. She didn't know how long she had been unconscious, but she was lying on the side of the river. She slowly pulled herself to her feet and felt her head, which was fully restored. She didn't understand how she had survived, and she really didn't care. There was only one thing that creation did care about, and put her hands on her swollen belly. Vincent Frankenstein hadn't counted on the creation's vampiric healing factor restoring the ovaries that he had removed prior to giving her life. On Christmas Eve, she had conceived life with Reggie. Later on Christmas Day, her first child would be born. The first child of a superior new race. All I Want for Christmas by Morgan Moore. A deathly chill blows through the night as light snow falls and gently blankets the ground. Cemetery gates creak open. Another gust of December wind blowing out of the hallowed grounds as they do so. The man who unlocked and opened the gates removes the key from the lock. In his other hand is a shovel. He looks into the cemetery and takes a deep breath, releasing it along with a sigh before walking in. The man in question was Jebediah Hawkins. Jebediah was a gravekeeper for the cemetery. He had a wife and a little girl. His reason for being in the cemetery tonight would never be anything of question. But it was Christmas Eve. Nobody worked in the cemetery on Christmas Eve or day. Jebediah walked through the cemetery, never wavering on his path. He was on a mission tonight, one he intended to complete. A few days ago, Jebediah was working a day shift. While he was cleaning in the funeral home that rested on the grounds, he spotted something that took his breath away. It was the body of a 6-year-old girl, the same age as his daughter. In her hands was a Tressie doll. Tressie dolls were the new toy of the year, selling like hotcakes, coming and going lickety-split. Every little girl wanted one, including Jebediah's daughter. Like many other parents, Jebediah and his wife had no luck finding the doll. Their daughter's birthday went by without her getting one. It broke the Hawkins' hearts to not be able to get the one thing their daughter wanted, the one thing she asked for in a childhood where she rarely, if ever, asked for anything. The two agreed that if either of them found a Tressie that, if they could, they would buy it on the spot. Unfortunately, their town was small, filled almost exclusively with small cell-phone stores. Stocks of the doll came and went in the blink of an eye, and out-of-town trips proved no better. The couple had just given up hope as Christmas approached, melancholic and ready to disappoint their daughter. Until Jebediah laid his eyes on the Tressie doll, clutched in the dead girl's hands. "Tragic, isn't it?" the Undertaker asked. "Huh?" Jebediah asked in response. "Poor lass fell off a horse she was riding and got trampled to death, right before Christmas to boot. Such a shame," the Undertaker explained as he walked away. "Yeah, a real shame," Jebediah answered. The next day, Jebediah watched as the girl was buried, the Tressie doll still in her hands. When he asked why they kept it, the Undertaker told him that girl and doll went everywhere together, like they were the best of friends. Her parents thought it would be appropriate then that she went off to heaven with a friend so she wouldn't be lonely. It didn't take long for Jebediah to formulate his plan. Jebediah approached the grave of the little girl. More snow and wind blew around him, the cold cutting through to his bones. "Am I really about to do this?" he thought. He wanted to give his daughter a great Christmas, give her the one thing she asked for. Can I do this? His answer was an earth-piercing yes as he stabbed the shovel into the ground. He repeats the action again and again, throwing snow-covered dirt off to the side as he works his way deeper into the little girl's grave. Jebediah's mind blocked out all thoughts of the dead child he saw only a few days ago, instead conjuring up the image of his daughter with the doll, playing happily a few hours from now on Christmas Day. He thought of him and his wife sitting by the fire come nightfall, an extra happy Christmas behind them. It was these thoughts that kept Jebediah busy until he felt the shovel head slam into the coffin. Jebediah looked down at the small box. A gust of wind blew by and threw dirt down onto Jebediah and the coffin, almost as if the universe was telling him to stop. "I can't stop. Not now." Jebediah started to stab the coffin with the shovel. As the head struck the casket repeatedly, wood splintered and flew up. Jebediah kept at it for minutes before finally punching a hole through the coffin. He stared down into the breach and saw the little girl's face and the doll. The desperate father tossed the shovel out of the grave and knelt down beside the coffin. Jebediah gulped as he stared down at the girl's corpse. He reached into the coffin, grabbed the doll, and pulled up. Nothing budged. Jebediah tried again, but nothing moved. He looked closer as he kept trying to pull the doll out. The doll was clasped so tightly in her hands that it wouldn't budge. Every tug got him nowhere closer to getting the Tressie doll. The night was moving on and the temperature was dropping. Soon it would be midnight. Christmas. If he didn't get the doll back home in time, then Christmas would be ruined. Jebediah braced a foot against the coffin and grabbed the doll with both hands. He put all his strength into one big tug. The doll came free, and so did the hands of the little girl, still gripping the doll. Jebediah stared in horror at the image. He pried the hands off the doll and threw them back into the coffin. Jebediah stared down, into the hole, into the coffin, and at the dead little girl, her hands laying on opposite ends of her body. The more he looked at her, the more she started to remind him of his own daughter. Jebediah felt a tinge of regret for what he'd done. What if his daughter was dead and someone dug up her body to get something? He looked down at the doll. All of this fuss over a simple little doll. Jebediah stretched his arms out, hands trembling as he told himself he couldn't take it. He closed his eyes, unable to bear looking at the corpse. The man tried to conjure up images more pleasant. What came to him was the image of his daughter on Christmas morning, playing with her new Tressie doll. Jebediah opened his eyes and looked at the doll. He had to go through with it, he told himself, for his little girl. Sorry, Jebediah said to the dead girl. He climbed out of the grave and set the doll down before picking up the shovel. Quickly, he filled the hole back up with dirt, grabbed the doll, and hightailed it out of the cemetery, into his car, and sped away into the night. Jebediah snuck into his house, being careful not to make too much noise. He headed to the kitchen and turned on a small light above the sink. Jeb placed the doll down, took off his coat, and picked the doll back up. With a flick of his wrist, Jebediah turned on the water and started to clean the doll. After some time, the doll was clean of all dirt, and Jebediah managed to get out some of the stench of earth. He smiled at the Tressie and placed it on the kitchen table. "Now to get you wrapped up," Jebediah said triumphantly. Jebediah walked out of the kitchen and started heading to his wife's sewing room. The grandfather clock in the living room struck midnight. It was Christmas. Jebediah stopped as the clock chimed and looked at the Christmas tree. Suddenly, a microburst assaulted the Hawkins house. The windows burst open and wind and snow assaulted Jebediah. He tried to get to the windows, but is throated by how strong the wind is. Next, he attempted to retreat to the sewing room, but a gust of wind blew through the windows inside the room and slammed Jebediah to the ground. He tried to stand up, but found that he couldn't. Instead, he crawled his way back into the kitchen. Upon entering the kitchen, the wind stopped. The house felt deathly cold as Jebediah stood up, cautiously. He went to call out for his family, but found he couldn't due to a tightening pressure on his throat. Jebediah looked down at his neck and found a disembodied hand clasped around it. He grabbed hold of the hand and tore it off of him, bits of flesh and blood going with it. Jeb threw it to the ground and stomped as hard as he could on it, crushing it in a single blow. A shrill mix of a cry and laugh rang in Jebediah's ears. He spun around to find the ghostly image of the little girl from the grave hovering in his kitchen. Jebediah gasped in disbelief at what was in front of him. "What? You're dead!" he cried. "Give it back," the spirit demanded. "Give what back?" "My friend." The ghastly girl screamed loud enough to shatter windows. Jebediah stood confused until he remembered what the Undertaker had said. "That girl and doll went everywhere together, like they were the best of friends. Her parents thought it would be appropriate then that she went off to heaven with a friend, so she wouldn't be lonely." The doll. It was that damned doll. Jebediah stared up at the table, How could a doll have made this happen? He asked himself. He looked at the girl. You don't understand. My daughter, she wants it, needs it. You'll have plenty of friends up in heaven. Can't you allow a little girl to know the happiness you knew with it? Jebediah pleaded. The girl answers with her other detached hand, grabbing hold of Jebediah's face, its nails digging into his flesh. He grabbed hold of the hand and once more freed himself, his face bearing gashes that would scar. Jebediah quickly got to his feet and grabbed the Tressie doll off the table and ran from the kitchen. Jebediah ran into the living room. As he tried to approach the stairs, the ghost appeared. She brought down everything she could in the living room to stop him in his path. Books, furniture, anything and everything. But Jebediah persevered. Finally, he reached the stairs and ascended them to the second floor. The house started to shake. A deafening cry of anguish and rage echoed through the house. Jebediah sprinted towards his daughter's room. No! An avalanche of snow fell upon the Hawkins house. Jebediah screamed as the force brought down the roof. The second floor collapsed onto the first, leaving the house completely and utterly demolished. Jebediah bolted awake, gasping for air. Despite the wintry cold, he was drenched in sweat. Honey, what is it? His wife asked in a panic. She rubbed the small of his back, and the sensation of feeling touch brought comfort to him. He looked at his wife and embraced her in a tight, near-violent hug. Mrs. Hawkins returned the gesture. Jebediah broke the embrace and ran out of their bedroom and into his daughter's. She wasn't there. Downstairs! He exclaimed. Jebediah ran downstairs with his wife not too far behind him. When they reached the living room, the couple found their daughter sitting by the Christmas tree. She turned and looked at her parents with a smile. Jebediah sighed in relief. What kept you sleepyheads waiting? It's Christmas, the daughter said. Yes it is, Jebediah said with a huge smile. It was all a dream, he told himself. Mr. and Mrs. Hawkins sat on their couch while their daughter began to open presents. Jebediah kissed his wife, and the two shared smiles and I love yous. From the outside looking in, the Hawkins were having a perfect Christmas. But outside, in a blackened, ethereal plain, the little girl sat and looked through the roof and into the house. She grinned. Well, Tressie, it looks like we have some new friends. Forever and ever. Merry Christmas, she told her doll, giving it a big hug before returning her gaze to her brand new toys. Blood on the Snow by Shane Migliavacca. The cold numbed the man's feet. The snow was nearly to his knees. There was nobody to be seen. It was a blizzard on Christmas Eve. Only fools and lunatics would be on the road tonight. He could have sworn he'd seen a sign. What the hell was it called? Vera's Roadhouse. He could go for a nice juicy burger and some fries, though he really doubted they'd be open. I don't think you saw it. The man didn't turn. He didn't want to give Simon the satisfaction. This is a fine mess you've gotten us in, Simon moaned. We should go back. We have a job to do. Away down the road, the man stopped. An abandoned car sat alongside the shoulder, covered by the steady snowfall. Brushing the snow off the driver's side window, the man peered inside. The interior was bathed in a faint red hue. The car was empty save for a cell phone sitting on the passenger side seat, a red, depleted battery symbol on its screen. There were words written on the inside of the windshield, in what appeared to be red lipstick. "The woods are lovely, dark and deep," Simon read. The man backed away from the car, looking around. "Strange," Simon observed. "Look at the snow." He pointed to the snow in front of the car. Through the covering of fresh snow, 2 sets of footprints were still visible, one from the car and one approaching it. "Looks like a struggle, maybe," Simon noted. Indeed, it looked like a scuffle of some kind happened where the 2 sets of footprints came together. "I think you're right," the man answered. "Finally, he speaks." The man ignored his companion. The second set came from ahead. Then one left and headed through the woods. The man was tempted to see where the footprints led, but his feet ached, and the road promised a glimmer of shelter and warmth. Angela really wanted to go home. Not that she had much to go home to in her little apartment, yet it was a hell of a lot better than waiting tables at the roadhouse. Vera was paying her extra for Christmas Eve, and Angela needed the money if she was ever going to leave Dillonsville. There was a small group tonight. 3 regulars, Stu, the cook, and Vera. "Man, look at that shit come down." "I think it's nice, Billy," Vera said. "Gonna have a white Christmas." Billy scoffed. "Fuck Christmas." "You're just an old Scrooge," the old black man sitting at the bar said, before taking a shot of whiskey. "Got that right, Marvin," Billy laughed. "You won't see me wishing anybody a Merry Christmas." "I remember one Christmas," the old man mused for a moment. 20 years back, we didn't have snow until January." "That's global warming for you," Angela spoke up. "Fuck global warming," Billy grumbled. Vera scolded. "Every other word out of your mouth is either fuck, shit, or damn." "Well, hell, I guess I need my mouth washed with fucking soap." This brought a chuckle from another of the regulars. "Don't encourage him, Donnie," Vera said. Donnie, a heavy-set bald man, sat at the end of the bar. "Earlier tonight I saw the strangest-looking light coming out of the woods. Made me feel weird just seeing it," Donnie said softly. "What'd it look like?" "Strange green color, like nothing I'd seen before. Probably some kid snowmobiling got fancy new headlights or something," Billy said dismissively. The front door opened. It banged hard against the wall, startling Angela. A man in a black leather jacket stood in the entrance, brushing snow off his goatee. "Get in here," he ordered. A woman carrying a young girl entered. She flashed a meek smile. "Warm in here," the woman smiled. "Won't be for long if you keep the door open," Billy said, earning a glare from the man. "What brings you folks out on Christmas Eve?" Vera asked. The woman set the girl down. "We were visiting my mother. Ollie thought we could beat the storm home." Vera sat them at one of the booths. "What can I get you folks?" The woman looked at the girl. "What do you want, hun?" Hot chocolate?" Vera smiled. "Can do." "Got a beer?" Ollie asked. "Not tonight," the woman said. "You promised." "I'll drink what I want, Marie." Marie looked at Vera. "I'll have a hot chocolate, too." "You folks hungry? I'll have Angela bring you some menus." Sure, Ollie said. "Whatever." "Hey, Vera," Donnie spoke up. "A hot chocolate sounds good. I'll have one, too." Donnie slid off the bar stool he'd been keeping warm. Hefting up his loose-fitting pants, he walked over to the table with the newcomers. "Mama, are we going to be home in time for Santa?" the little girl asked Marie. "I'm not sure, honey." "Will Santa still bring stuff if we're not home?" "He won't come if you're a bad girl and keep making noise," Ollie warned her. Donnie tried to make small talk. "Quite a night out, huh?" "Terrible," Marie answered. Donnie smiled and waved to the girl. "What's your name, little one?" "Haley," the girl responded, looking worried. "Why don't you leave us alone, man?" Ollie's eyes narrowed to slits. "Mind your own business." "Sure, sorry." The door opened again, letting in a whirlwind of snow. The man stood there at its center. He stepped into the roadhouse, slamming the door shut in Simon's face. "Hey, wait!" Simon protested before the door closed. The man felt their eyes on him as he went over to a corner booth. From here he had a good view of the roadhouse. Angela approached him, looking a little apprehensive. "Merry Christmas," she smiled. "Can I get you something to drink or bring you a menu?" "A Coke and a cheeseburger with fries, and make it bloody." "Right." She left, and after a moment, Simon slumped into the seat opposite him, brushing snow from his shoulders and hair. "Very funny," Simon bitched. "I thought so. Order anything for me?" "No." "Figures." Donnie sidled up to the man's table. "The place is jumping tonight. Have some car trouble?" "I don't want to do this." Donnie looked perplexed. "What? Don't want what?" "This," the man said. "Talking. Go away." A heavy-set man, his hair pulled back into a ponytail, leaned his head out of the kitchen. "Vera? Angela? When do you get me some rolls from storage?" The man sat, watching the others as he waited for his food. Donnie went back to his bar stool and began talking to Marvin. Angela, the waitress, brought a tray with food and drinks to the family sitting near the entrance. Another patron, Angela called him Billy, was playing a pinball machine. The man felt the tiredness creeping up on him. How long had it been since he'd slept? His eyelids grew heavy as weariness began to conquer him. His head drooped forward. His eyes snapped open again as a scream ripped through the roadhouse. Vera screamed again, tears running down her red cheeks. "Out back! Dead!" Stu and Angela comforted Vera as Billy questioned her. "What the hell are you talking about, woman? Who's dead?" A man, I don't know who, by the storeroom." Billy and Stu left to go look as Angela sat, holding Vera's hand. "That's crazy, huh? A dead guy?" Donnie asked Marvin, who was busy pouring himself another drink. "Lots of crazy shit in the world these days, boys." The man got up. He felt a nagging itch in his head. Simon was gone, and there was a dead man. He had to see. Had to know. Donnie called after him as he walked by. "Where are you going, mister?" "To see a dead body."
Don't go away. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
The storeroom was a separate building behind the roadhouse. Billy and Stu were staring at the body when he found them. "Never seen this fella before," Stu was saying. "Shit, me neither." The body sat, its back against the storeroom's wall, partially covered in snow. "Well, he's dead all right," the man said, startling Billy and Stu. "Fuck! Don't do that, dude!" Billy warned. "Almost shit him." "Know him, mister?" Stu asked. The man shook his head. It wasn't anyone he recognized. A small blessing, anyway. "No, but I did see an abandoned car down the road. Maybe it was his." Stu pondered this tidbit. Could be. Anybody check him for ID?" "You mean like, touch him?" Billy shivered at the thought. Billy and Stu looked at the man, stepping out of the way. Billy motioned to the body. "Be my guest." The man knelt in front of the body. The dead man's eyes were wide, a horrified expression etched on his face. "Holy hell!" Stu exclaimed. "What killed him?" Billy asked, his voice wavering. The man brushed more snow off the body. There were no visible marks or wounds anywhere. "No clue." The man searched the body. "Should you be touching him?" Stu asked. "He could have something." The man found a wallet. Inside was $50, a picture of a woman, and a driver's license. "Adam Hunter," he said out loud. "Merry Christmas." Stu stroked his stubbly chin. What do we do with him?" "Leave him here," the man said. "He ain't going anywhere and he'll be frozen. No smell." "Suppose you're right." The man slipped the wallet back into the corpse's pocket before heading back in with Billy and Stu. Inside, not much had changed. Angela sat in one of the booths with Vera. Donnie sat at the bar annoying Marvin, and the family were still seated where they were previous. Angela looked up as they entered. "Is he—" Billy nodded. Was he, murdered?" "Well, that's tough to say, really," Stu said. "We should call the cops. I think Vera needs a doctor." "I'm fine," Vera said, wiping her bloodshot eyes. "I've never seen that kind of look on a man's face before," Billy said, sitting down at the bar. If he was killed," Vera stammered, "that means somebody did it." She looked at the others. An uneasy hush fell over everybody. The man felt the others' eyes on him. "What?" "Well, you aren't from around here," Stu said. "Neither are they." The man pointed to the family. "They got a kid," Billy spoke up. "Besides, you seemed mighty comfortable around that body." "Right," Stu nodded. The man felt sweat trickle down his brow. "Maybe you're a maniac," Donnie answered. "A serial killer." "He looks suspicious," Vera observed. "Look at him, sweating." "You're all being a bunch of idiots," Marvin stated, before taking another shot of whiskey. The man shook his head. "I didn't kill that man." Where was Simon? The man thought. He could really use him right about now. "We should call the cops," Angela suggested. "They can handle it. We don't know if he did anything." Marie stood up. "We should at least lock him up, especially with my daughter here." "I agree," Billy said. "Look, you muskrat love-listening motherfuckers." The man looked at Marie and her daughter. "Pardon my French. I didn't kill that guy. In fact, how do we know it wasn't one of you assholes?" Marvin started laughing. "He's got you there." Angela stood, taking out her phone. "Everybody calm down. I'm going to call the cops. They can sort it all out." Stu seemed to be swayed by this. "Yeah, let them deal with it." Billy grumbled. "Fine." He looked at the man coldly. Vera went behind the bar. "Why don't I make us all some coffee?" The man sat in one of the booths, looking out the window watching the snowfall. "Crap," Angela complained. "All I'm getting is a recording. All the lines must be busy from the storm." "Angela, want to help me with the coffee?" Vera asked. "Coming," Angela answered. "Can I get a beer?" Ollie hollered. "If we're going to be stuck here, might as well enjoy it." Haley tugged at her mother's sleeve. Mama, I gotta pee." Marie looked at Ollie unsure. "I'm not sure, honey." Ollie grumbled. "Take her. Give me some quiet." Taking Haley by the hand, Marie asked Donnie directions to the restrooms. The man watched them go by. He sat wishing he was anywhere but here, on Christmas night. It was obvious most of the people here were ready to pin that dead man on him, but he didn't give a shit about any of them. There was a job to do. The lights flickered rapidly before going out. There were murmurs of shock, confusion, and anger from the patrons and staff. Stu spoke up, trying to calm everyone. "Storm probably knocked out some power lines. Don't worry, I got a generator out back." Then, from somewhere in the roadhouse, somebody screamed. The man felt somebody rush by him in the dark. The others called out. After several minutes of darkness and uncertainty, Angela appeared holding her cell phone to light the way. They followed Angela to the women's bathroom. Vera stood with a shaken Marie and Haley. "In there," Vera motioned to the middle stall. Shining the light into the stall, they crowded around. Sitting there, slumped on the toilet, was a dead woman. She wore an ugly Christmas sweater, made uglier by the blood frozen to it from her slashed throat. Written behind her, in blood, it read, "But I have promises to keep." "Holy shit!" Donnie gasped. Vera took Marie and Haley out of there. Who is she? Fucked if I know, Stu replied. She's been dead a while, the man pointed out. After some debate, they agreed to leave the woman sitting there. Best not to disturb any evidence. Back at the bar, they found Marie and Haley sitting together in a booth. Vera had lit a couple of kerosene lanterns, giving the interior a soft glow. Deep shadows lurked at the fringes of the light. Coffee's ready, Vera informed them. Stu exhaled. His breath was visible in the lantern light. I'm going out to start the generator, he said, pulling on a heavy jacket. Are you going out there alone? Donnie asked. Stu reached under the bar, pulling out a pump shotgun. Not alone. Vera and Angela handed out mugs of hot coffee. The man took one, watching the steam rise off it. He felt too nervous to drink. He was used to being in control, and now he was stuck in the middle of nowhere. There were 2 dead bodies, and Simon was missing. He needed Simon. The man didn't even notice the lights flickering back to life until Donnie clapped. We can warm up a little at least, Vera said, rubbing her hands together. Vera and Angela went back to the kitchen. The others hung by the bar, talking amongst themselves, save for Ollie, Marie, and their girl. The man kept to himself, not trusting any of them. Minutes went by before Vera emerged from the kitchen with Angela, both holding trays of sandwiches. Where's Stu? Vera asked, looking around. There was a murmur among them as they realized he hadn't returned. 4 of them went out. The man, Vera, Billy, and Angela. The wind began to batter them with cold and snow. Vera guided them around the back of the storeroom to a small shed. She let out a startled gasp as they neared the structure. There, laying in the snow, was what once could have been called a human being. But as of now, it was akin to a charcoal briquette. A few feet away lay Stu's shotgun. Written on the shed in charred black substance, it read, "And miles to go before I sleep." Somebody was playing a game with them, the man thought. Vera had to steady herself. Who would do this? The man looked down at the snow-covered ground. Well, besides our fresh tracks and Stu's, there are only one other set. All of them coming from the back door. We were all together, Billy observed, except for... He looked at Angela and Vera. Had to be one of you.
Did you hear that? Better check the locks on your doors. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
Angela looked at Billy with a hurt expression. Why would I... You had eyes on Stu all the time, Vera accused, laughing at his jokes all the time, fawning all over him, trying to steal him away from me. You're nuts, Angela spat. Jealous old bitch. Angela slapped Vera across the face. Vera retaliated by clawing at Angela's face with her long nails. Billy stepped in, pushing them apart. While this was going on, the man made his move. The 3 were so preoccupied with their argument they'd paid no attention to him. He'd charged forward, scooping up the shotgun. Enough of this Jerry Springer bullshit. He leveled the shotgun on the 3. Get inside. Over there, the man ordered. Sit down. What the hell? Ali blurted out as they entered. What's going on? Marvin asked. Stu's dead, Vera said. Burned alive. We don't know it was him, Angela argued. Who the hell else would it be? Vera growled. Sit, the man ordered. Vera and Angela sat, but Billy resisted. Look, dude, don't go ordering us around and waving that shotgun in our... The man drove the butt of the shotgun into Billy's stomach, dropping him to his knees. The others let out a startled gasp. Now with that foolishness out of the way, Billy, I got a little something I'd like to try. Cool with that? Billy nodded, glaring at the man. Angela, hold out your hands. Marvin shook his head. He's loco. Angela, trembling, held her hands out in front of her. Don't worry, the man reassured her. Okay, Billy, smell her hands. Motherfucking what? Billy exclaimed. Go ahead, take a whiff. Angela blushed as Billy, still on his knees, smelled her hands. What's it smell like? The man asked. Billy shook his head. I don't know. Peppermint, I guess? Okay, now do the same with Vera. Ollie spoke up. What the fuck is this supposed to prove? You getting your rocks off or something? Stu was doused with gasoline and burned. I'm willing to bet whoever did it, their hands stink of it. Billy knelt in front of Vera. Whatever, man. Before he could sniff her palms, Vera leapt on him, pulling a knife out of her jacket. She stabbed Billy in the chest. The others screamed in horror and shock. The man aimed at Vera, his finger at the trigger. Marvin and Donnie stumbled into his line of fire. The two struggled to restrain Vera. Get out of my way, the man shouted. Vera slashed at Marvin, forcing him to back off. Donnie managed to knock the knife from Vera's hand, but the crazed woman grabbed him by the throat. She locked eyes with the confused Donnie, and they both screamed, but he managed to shove her head into the corner of a nearby table. She crumpled to the floor, as did Donnie, breathing heavily. Everyone remained frozen in place for a moment, in shock. Angela moved first and began checking Billy, then Vera. They're dead, she said with a heavy sigh. The man looked over at Marvin. You okay, old man? I'm fine, just a little nick. He looked at the small gash on his arm. And don't call me old man, Marvin grumbled. What about him? The man motioned to Donnie. Donnie started to stand, a bit shaky. You okay, Donnie? Angela asked. He cracked his neck. Just dandy. That was fucked up. The little girl was sobbing as Marie tried to comfort her. Ollie stood taking in the scene. Was that crazy bitch the killer? He walked over to the bodies. I need another drink. I guess, Angela answered. The man watched them, still holding the shotgun. She had to be, Donnie added. Gasoline smell on her hands. We have to get the sheriff out here, Marvin said. Angela sighed. I just want to go home and sleep. Miles to go before you sleep, Donnie said. What? The man said. What did you just say? Nothing at all. I just want to sleep too, Donnie answered. Ollie went to the bar taking a bottle of scotch. I don't think they'll mind. He walked by Donnie, who grabbed the bottle from his hand. Give me some. Donnie gulped some of the scotch down. Hey, asshole, Ollie complained. That was mine. Donnie hammered Ollie in the head with the bottle. Once, twice, 3 times. Fine, have it. Ollie fell dead to the floor, his body a bloody mess. The man opened fire, the thunder of his shotgun echoing through the roadhouse. Donnie was already moving before he'd fire. The slug missed all but the big man's arm, grazing him. Donnie yanked a startled Marie from her seat, holding her by the throat in front of him. Fire away, Donnie laughed. Who are you? The man asked. A sleeper, a traveler, Donnie answered. I've been wandering forever, but your bodies are so weak. Let her go, the man ordered. Why? We're playing. He tightened his grip on Marie. It's the only thing that makes this life interesting. Yeah, but you don't want to go running around in that fat asshole anymore, do you? The thing inside Donnie pondered that for a moment. What are you offering? Me, the man offered. Let them go. Sure, why not? He laughed. Drop the gun and come here. Angela stood next to the man. Don't do it. Trust me, he reassured her as he dropped the shotgun to the ground. He stepped forward. The others watched as Donnie took him by the head. They locked eyes. Pain seared through every fiber of his being. For what seemed like an eternity of agony, he felt every inch of his mind assaulted. Finally it ended, and Donnie collapsed to the floor, moaning in pain. Marie grabbed her daughter and held her. The man braced himself against a table. "Your head is filled with so much static," the thing said. "Are you okay?" Angela asked. "Stay away," the man warned. "I can't hold on to myself." He felt it, laughing in his head. "I'm here for you." Simon stood in the doorway of the roadhouse. "Simon, I knew you hadn't left me." The man smiled. Angela looked at the others and then the man. "Who are you talking to?" The man pointed to the shotgun on the floor. "If I come back, use it. I won't be me." He stepped out into the cold. It was hard to see. The wind and snow assaulted his senses. He could feel the presence inside him. "You won't hold me for long," it taunted. "I'll go back, kill the rest." "You're just another voice in my head," the man responded. "I've lived with so many in there for as long as I can remember." He trudged through the snow. His body was tired, but Simon beckoned him on. The bitter cold clawed at his body as the thing inside clawed at his soul. He'd find a place somewhere out here, far away from anybody else. Miles to go before we sleep. "12 Days" by Mike Ashkui. To whom it may concern. The following data logs were recovered from the wreckage and flight recorder of the United Earth Colony ship Roanoke in the year 2370. The data contained within is from the lone custodial engineer aboard the vessel during its journey to the proposed colony site on planet LV, Life Viable, 529. The original colony mission was launched from Pluto Station in 2280 and was projected to take 25 years. Support staff, their families, as well as a number of colonists were estimated to have numbered at 2,000. All crew and support staff are presumed to have perished under questionable circumstances between December 12, 2290 and December 25, 2290. Certain portions of the record have been redacted to protect United Earth military interests and to protect certain individuals as well. Records will officially become available for public consumption in January 2500 via Freedom of Information request. Please retain all confidential information as eyes-only clearance. Contact your United Earth Military Science Division Support Officer for additional questions and follow-up. Sincerely, Recovery Officer, Titan Outpost, Aaron Ricci. Date, February 2nd, 2375. Roanoke Colony Ship Flight Recorder Data Stream begins. Audio Log, Number 1. December 12th, 2290. Good morning? Is this thing on? This is Custodial Engineer David Lambert, and this is my maintenance shift aboard the Roanoke. My logs will be recorded via audio and by the ship's virtual intelligence, aka Vinny. Well, Ma, you always wanted me to go out and get a job, and well, here I am. I'm on the frontier of space and with a whole new family of about 2,000. Maybe now I'll find a wife, eh? Or maybe a husband. I've always considered dating an android too, so maybe we can have robo-babies. A brave new world, for me. It's December 12th, and I'm the only one awake aboard the ship while everyone else is in cryo-sleep for the next several months. They need someone to make sure we don't bounce too close to a star or accidentally veer off course. Now, odds are I'll volunteer and run a maintenance shift again and let everyone stay frozen, and I'll stay awake for 2 weeks and maintain the systems. They only need a person to stay awake for a few weeks at a time to maintain things and then go back to sleep for a few months. Then rinse and repeat. It's like I'm a captain of my own ship in a sense. I'll wake up again in March, make sure we're all still alive, and going where we're supposed to go and not wake up any of the United Earth stuffed shirts unless I have to. It's lonely, but I don't mind. I have Vinny to keep me company and the entire Library of Congress on Holo and every soccer match in history. I'll be alright. It's Christmas time here and, well, I'm gonna decorate, even if it's only for myself and Vinny. I managed to make some tinsel out of some stuff I found in the engineering tool room. I think it's fiber optics of some sort or maybe some of that nanotube stuff. I think maybe tomorrow I'll see if I can put up a tree or some sort in the mess hall. I know it's just me and the AI, but it at least makes me feel somewhat like home while I'm here. I'll check the computer systems, life support, and make sure the slipstream drive's output is within acceptable range. We won't hit our first milestone for another few years of this journey, but gotta make sure I cross the I's and dot the T's. Wait, is that the phrase? Fuck it, never mind. Vinny, end audio log number 1. Audio log number 2, December 13th, 2290. Log day 2 of maintenance shift. I was checking the computer logs yesterday and found something, weird. Seems like about 2 weeks ago we had a small containment breach in one of the lower science laboratories. It was supposed to be related to something that some of the scientists had called...
Redacted.
Sounds kinda scary to me, but none of my business. Don't know how I feel about them messing with...
Redacted.
But then again, I'm not supposed to understand it. It was likely caused when we came a little close to a radiation anomaly while in slip space. Vinny, the ship's computer, chose not to wake anyone up because it was deemed not a threat, but did note it in the ship's log. Guess I didn't see it till this morning when I went through it all manually. Weird. No one should get too pissy at me, right? Vinny, why didn't you wake anyone up? Is that you being nice by letting us sleep in the freezers a bit longer, or is it a malfunction in your computer core? Guess I'll take a look tomorrow, but right now I have more important things to do. I found an old robotic exoskeleton that I can turn into a kind of Christmas tree. I'll probably decorate it tonight and listen to old Christmas tunes while doing my reports. My moms and I used to always celebrate Christmas and make it a big deal. We'd have hot cocoa and watch Hollows, and we'd have a ski trip too. I miss my moms. Come to think of it, will they even be alive when we reach the new colony? Can't even send a transmission in Slipstream without a massive time delay. I hope they're okay. Audio log number 3, December 14th, 2290. I went down to the
Redacted.
Lab this morning and it's a mess. Stuff was strewn everywhere and it seems something broke out of one of the organic experiment labs. It's supposed to be harmless genetic experimentation. I think stuff with grown hormones and cross species. Dr.
Redacted.
is not going to be happy. She always seemed grumpy anyway, so what do I care? I've noted it with Vinny and internal sensors are actively sweeping each deck. What more can I do? All biologics are supposed to be frozen solid for the trip, or at least in minimal activity and securely monitored for 25 years. I don't think it's dangerous. I mean, it's probably some designer animal that somebody wants to field test on a new planet. If it was dangerous at all, Vinny would have warned me. Maybe it's a kitty. Would that be too much to hope for? I know the
Redacted.
Lab is secure at least. Vinny has the doors hermetically sealed. It'll take a scientist's authorization. It's someone else's problem now. I've cleaned up and secured the lab as best I can and accounted for all the labeled growth experiments. All experiment pods are locked up tight and cryo seals are in place. Likely gonna set up in the mess hall tonight and watch a bunch of movies and maybe rehydrate a turkey dinner. It'll be a nice way to unwind after the day I've had. Audio log number 4, December 16th, 2290. Something bad happened this morning. I'm sorry to report that we lost a portion of the crew. Vinny is still compiling data now, but it seems like there was an accident in one of the cryopod's bays. Most of the military crew's pods failed. There was a malfunction inside their cryopods and it flooded them with the freezing solution. They were basically all frozen solid and the bodies were destroyed in a way that I don't care to describe for the record. Vinny can explain in a more scientifically detailed method if you wish. The poor bastards didn't feel a thing. I don't think so anyway. We lost 300 people in the blink of an eye. I'm at a loss for words. I'll perform my full account of the dead and then I'll begin procedures to wake up the command crew and inform them of what happened. I don't want to be alone anymore. Weirdest thing, though. There was music playing in the cryo bay as I entered. It was Silent Night. I didn't do that. But if I didn't do that, then who did? That has to be my imagination. Too many long hours stuck on this boat. Audio log number 6, December 17th, 2290. I can't bring the other cryopods online. The command crew, the support staff, I can't even wake up another custodial engineer. The system refuses to respond. Vinny is reporting a system-wide failure relating to the reanimation system caused by yesterday's failure. It believes it can be repaired, but it'll involve taking him offline for several days while it runs low-level diagnostics. It would just be me and the ship, and maybe whatever else is on board. This has to be just an accident and a coincidence. I'll clean up as respectfully as I can, but I may let the ship's reclamation and automated systems deal with it. A burial in space isn't so bad, right? I know they deserve better, but look, I'm just a custodian. I don't get paid enough to put people into buckets to be later identified. I'm not overly religious, but maybe I'll pray for them tonight or something. Say a few nice things. I'll say something. Anything. Wait, strike that from the record, please. Shit. Vinny's offline. Please strike that from the record. Fuck.
Did you hear that? Better check the locks on your doors. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
Audio log number 7, December 19th, 2290. Vinny is still offline and repairing themselves. Something weird is going on here. Internal motion sensors keep going off on random decks. I've had motion detected on the engineering level, recreation centers, and even some in the nursery cryopods. I still am unable to wake the crew. I even went down to the main command level and tried to manually override the captain's pod. She's still sound asleep. Communications are also completely offline as well. According to the logs, they were manually taken offline over a month ago. Something is wrong here. I'm afraid to go to sleep right now. I'm going to go down to the armory and get a gun and sleep with it beside me. Probably overkill, though. What was that thing that Mom used to say? Happiness is a warm gun. It'll make me feel safer if I get a gun. I'm getting a gun. Audio log number 8, December 20th, 2290. Life support keeps flicking on and off between the decks. Sometimes it's perfectly warm and suitable for people. And other times, it's almost as cold as the vacuum outside the ship. Internal alarms keep going off in the
redacted
room and now in the computer core. I can't get into the lab area, though. I sealed it off a few days ago, and without Dr.
redacted
authorization or one of her flunkies, I'm locked out. I guess I could try blowing the door and seeing what happens, but I don't want to risk rupturing the bulkheads. I doubt that seismic survey charges would work anyway. I went through the mess hall today and sat by my Christmas tree and tried to find a few minutes to get my thoughts together. I thought I'd feel safer here, someplace familiar. It didn't work. I swear the exoskeleton suit had moved where I'd put it. Now I haven't slept a lot in the last 24 hours, so I could be imagining it. I'm also positive I faintly heard something over the ship's intercoms. Like it was something only I could hear. Again, I haven't been sleeping well. Vinny should be back online soon, then I won't be alone. He'll wake up the crew and I won't be alone. I won't need this gun anymore. Oh yeah, this is David Lambert or whatever. Christ, I need to sleep. Audio log number 9, December 22nd, 2290. More are dead. I think we lost around 800 in the middle of the night. What in the fuck happened? The pods are flooded. They drowned in their sleep. Even the kids. Vinny came back online for a few but isn't responsive to commands. He won't even say hello to me. Just silence, but I know he can hear me. I know it sounds crazy, but I know I heard something laughing over the intercoms when I entered the colonist's cryogenics section. Internal sensors went offline, but not before I saw something on the monitors. That robotic exoskeleton was walking around the corridors. It doesn't even have a computer core. It's a fucking husk. It can't act independently. I am not fucking crazy. Why am I still recording these? Someone has to know what the fuck is happening here. I am not crazy. I didn't kill these people. Mom, I'm sorry I didn't say goodbye to you. To either of you. Please, God. Help me. Audio log number 10. December 23rd, 2290. I'm being hunted now. Vinny isn't a virtual intelligence. It's an artificial intelligence, and whatever it is, wants me dead. Something escaped from the
redacted
labs and contaminated the biological portions of his computer core. Vinny took the exoskeleton and is hunting me, deck by deck. Vinny is alive and has a body now. He is the ship and at the same time is stalking the ship in a robotic suit that I just had to drag up from storage. Power randomly fluxes off across the different decks and sections. Vinny controls the ship. If the rest of the crew isn't dead by now, they soon will be. I took this portable recorder which goes directly to the flight recorder, which is independent of his operating systems. I don't think the pistol I have can pierce the exoskeleton's plating. It's funny. I'm going to be murdered by something that was supposed to bring me joy. Did I mention I made it a funny little Santa hat and beard? I'm going to die out here. And there isn't a whole lot I can do about it. I thought we were friends, Vinny. Didn't I treat you right? I thought we were friends. Audio log number 11. December 24th, 2290. Vinny is slowly siphoning off the air on the ship. I'll suffocate in less than 24 hours and there isn't a lot that I can do about it. I can't get into the vehicle section to even get a spacesuit. The bay is locked tight, and even if I could, Vinny blew the doors and all the suits, vehicles, and everything was blown into space. I don't even think we're in slip space anymore. I don't feel the hum of the engines anymore. I think Vinny is toying with me now. He's playing with the environmental controls, and it's starting to get colder where I am. I can see my breath, and it's so cold. I can't even hold the pistol steady. The ship's speakers are playing Santa Claus is coming to town at a frequency that only I can hear. I fucking hate Christmas. Maybe I have one last thing I can do before I eventually suffocate. I'm not going to let this son of a bitch take me down, not without a fight. Ho, 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 motherfucker. Final data entry for United Earth Colony ship Roanoke. Custodial engineer David Lambert initiated liquid nitrogen purge in the engineering deck, critically damaging all systems and leaving the ship adrift on December 25, 2090 at 12:01 a.m. Ship has suffered critical engine failure to slipstream drive. Ship no longer able to complete mission objectives. Ship's virtual intelligence disabled by unknown user. Experiment
redacted.
Unaccounted for as of December 25, 2090. Escape pod launched with 0 biological life signs aboard. All crew and support staff dead due to catastrophic failure across multiple systems. Cause, likely sabotage. Internal reporting of mental instability of crew member custodial engineer David Lambert, likely responsible for crew and vessel destruction. Recommend investigation and activation of
redacted
protocol. Distress beacon activated on December 31st, 2090 by unknown user awaiting salvage and recovery operations. End transmission. A Christmas to Remember by Joe Salmo. Donnie shifted his old Ford pickup into gear as he left the rest stop. It should be the last gas stop before he was finally home. It had been a few years, and to be honest, for a while, he couldn't have made the trip even if he wanted to. He merged with traffic just as the snow started to fall. It looked like it was going to be a white Christmas, after all. He was both excited and apprehensive, if he was being honest. He left home almost 10 years ago and never looked back, heading south, running from something that even he couldn't name. Just a feeling. He always hated the North, and it bothered him to think he would die there. He headed to Fort Lauderdale as soon as he could, for a better life, where he almost instantly got hooked on heroin and became homeless, the shame of which kept him from calling home for help, at least at first. Then it got harder and harder for him to reach out, playing out his family's scrutiny in his brain over and over. He could just hear them calling him a junkie and a loser. Every time someone overdosed next to him at night under the yellow streetlights, and he was so high and scared all he could do was watch, another part of that kid that moved south left him, until looking into the puddle's reflection, even he didn't recognize who he was. Florida was such an evil, soul-sucking place, he would think at times like that. It destroyed who he was and replaced him with this junkie in his skin. He didn't know whose eyes looked back at him with the disheveled beard, the worn and torn Nirvana t-shirt, and the shorts that used to be pants until he ripped them jumping a chain-link fence to get away from the cops. The first year was rough, but it got easier as Donnie fell into the groove, got used to it. An old Japanese man taught him to steal hot dogs from the grocery store. He wouldn't eat them, though. He'd walk down to the canals, cut a small piece off, and use them to catch fish. Tenkara, or something he called it. He could catch enough fish to keep the cluster of junkies fed. It was a real loss when he died, but Donnie did find his wallet. He had money in there. Real money. A couple hundred. The next few weeks were a drug-induced blur. He made sure his family got his wallet back, though, even if it had no cash inside. The Ford's engine roared on the highway. It probably needed a muffler, to be honest. He could feel the vibration coming up through the seat and steering wheel. The smell of exhaust was strong. He fiddled with the radio, trying to remember the channels he used to listen to back in the day, but everything was static. "Welcome to New York," he said as he read the sign on the side of Interstate 287. It was nice to finally pass out of New Jersey. He wondered how many people say the same thing when they leave the sticky taint of the Northeast. He had always hated New Jersey. He got robbed on his travels down to Florida there while in Trenton overnight. 3 bikers robbed him outside his motel room. Luckily, he had locked his car keys in the car, or he would have had to end his trip right there. Now that he was thinking of it, that might be unluckier. Is that a word? He wondered. The snow had picked up and Donnie slowed the truck down, trying to see the road through the Star Wars hyperdrive view between wipers. The package slipped in the seat next to him. He instinctively threw a hand out to keep it from sliding off the worn bench seat. "Stay still," he said to the package, and looked at his wrap job. It wasn't bad, he thought. He looked back up at the road as his tires caught the bumps on the side to wake up drivers that fell asleep. Oh shit! The truck slid back and forth, but he couldn't get it under control. Luckily, there wasn't another vehicle near him, and when the Ford lost traction, it slid off the road alone, catching the bank and flipping down into the ditch about 30 feet from the pavement on its side. Donnie undid his seatbelt and did a quick pat-down to make sure he was okay. With a sigh of relief, he began trying to climb out, using the steering wheel as a step. He flopped out onto the frozen ground, just as the headlights cut out, leaving him in the silence of the snowstorm on the side of the New York State Thruway. He laid there for a moment, in the shock of the cold. His eyes grew heavy, and he started to close them. A sudden gust of wind made the truck creak, which snapped him out of it. He pulled himself up to a sitting position a few feet from the truck. He realized his worn-through Florida hoodie wasn't going to do it. He had to get up to the highway and get help. He scrambled up the embankments towards the road on hands and knees. He could see headlights coming towards him in the distance. A sense of hope filled him, made him warm. He peeked his head over the side of the road, seeing the car getting closer. The headlights were so close together, it must be one of those smart cars, Donnie thought. He rose to unsteady feet and began to wave frantically, hoping they would see him in the near blizzard that wrapped around him like a frozen blanket. There must be an inch and a half on the road now, he thought. The car veered into the left lane, then the right, then back again to the left. Donnie wondered if the person was drunk. The car was getting closer and he began to get worried that they might hit him. He took a step back off the road and his foot slipped out from under him. He smacked his face on the gravel shoulder and started to slide down the embankment, back to his truck. He started to turn as he slid and slammed into the roof of his truck with his hip, sending pain up his spine. He let out a cry. He was facing down with his head facing the truck. He couldn't see what happened with the car on the highway. He waited for the pain to subside before trying to move. The pain proved too much and he knew he screwed something up. He couldn't even get the strength to turn over. He laid there, helpless for a moment. Then he heard it. The sound of 2 car doors. Maybe they had seen him and stopped. He listened in the snowstorm as the sound of footfalls crunching the powdery snow grew louder. And were those voices he heard? It sounded like a child talking. He strained his ears trying to listen. The voices stopped. He wondered how much snow was on him now, with it whipping around like it was. Maybe they couldn't see him. "Help!" he called out into the night weakly. Then tried again. "Help!" He heard the voices again, but the wind was keeping him from hearing what they were saying. The footfalls came a little closer, but still seemed distant to him. "Someone there?" he called out. This time, he heard them talking. "But we must," a childish voice said. "No, we don't. We don't have any obligation," another high-pitched voice replied. "We can't just leave him there." "Sure we can. It's easy. We just go back up the hill and forget this happened," came the response. Donnie winced in pain and forced himself to turn over. He blinked the snow out of his eyes and strained in the night's storm to see who was there. "Help me, please," he said. "Now it's talking to us," one of the voices said with a sigh. Donnie heard the footfalls grow close, and he could make out 2 diminutive shadows in the darkness. One of them turned on a flashlight and stuck it in the snow to give them some light. "It looks injured," said the first voice Donnie had heard. "It might not be in good shape," came the reply. Donnie raised one hand up to block the immediate light and see his would-be rescuers. As his eyes adjusted, he made out the faces of two short people. They both wore green pointed hats. One was holding a black leather bag in his hand that reminded Donnie of the type he'd seen in old movies when doctors made house visits. They both had pointed soft shoes tied to some kind of snowshoe. "I mean, it seems like fate brought it to us," the one said. "You swerving while getting roadhead is hardly fate," the other replied. "Well, either way, this could go quite a ways towards our quota. Let me get the list." "Who the fuck are you guys?" Donnie asked, exasperated at the conversation. The one holding the bag looked at the other one, who now had a list. He turned it so his companion could see. The one holding the bag nodded and squatted down next to Donnie's face. "Ain't it obvious, kid? We ain't your fairy godmothers. We are the dream fulfillers, the ones working behind the scenes to make everything perfect every year. Now be quiet while I make some wishes come true," he said, and pulled a stainless steel saw from the bag.
There's more scares where that came from. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
"Liver, right?" The other nodded. "What the hell?" Donnie called out. "You gonna whine the whole time?" the doctor one asked. He placed one hand over Donnie's mouth, and Donnie tried to shout into the night. "You ever ask Santa for something impossible for Christmas? Do you have any idea how many people wish for the unfeasible? How the fuck do you think they work? New limbs and organs poof into existence for them? No, we have to go out and harvest the fucking things, and that fat jolly fuck gets all the credit." He ran the saw across Donnie's chest, cutting into the flesh. Donnie wondered if the cold or shock would numb the wound first, as he watched the steam rise from his open wound. "You see here, kid, we can scratch several wishes off our list. You're doing us a favor, really." "I know I don't seem appreciative, but I am," Doc said with another saw across the chest. The other one was returning from the car with a biohazard cooler. Donnie responded, but the doc was still covering his mouth. He stopped sawing and lifted his hand off Donnie's mouth for just a second. "What's that, kid?" "You guys are Santa's elves?" Donnie asked and began to laugh. "That funny to you?" Doc Elf asked. Donnie couldn't help but laugh in the freezing cold at the thought of being murdered by one of Santa's elves. "Something not elf-like about us?" Doc asked. The other elf climbed onto the truck and peered inside. "Are we not fucking full of cheer?" Boss? Come here," the one on the truck said to his partner. Doc Boss tossed down the saw in the snow and made his way over to the truck. The other elf had to help him up. "What do we got here?" he asked and turned back to Donnie. "Shit," Donnie said as he realized they had found his package. He scrambled for the saw in the snow. Every movement was a world of pain that tried to envelop him. He managed to get his grip on the saw and tried to rise to his knees. At least then he could look them in the eye. When he turned to face them, both elves looked at him in disgust as they held his package in front of them. "She had been so pretty," Donnie said as a tear streaked down his face. "I loved her." "Is that why you killed her?" Doc asked. "I gave it to her. The smack she OD'd on. It was my fault," he said, lowering the saw. I couldn't say goodbye yet." "She ain't so fresh, kid," Doc said. "She been dead a few days?" "Yeah, 3 now," Donnie responded. "Fuck, that's too long for us," he said, and tossed the cellophane-wrapped body down in the snow. He took a few steps closer to Donnie, then saw the saw. "What are you going to do with that? You're losing blood every second. There's no way you can win this." Donnie rose to his feet steadily. "Come at me, and I'll kick your fucking head off," Donnie said. You know that saw had reindeer ejaculate on it. It's a type of anesthesia. The only reason you're standing right now is pure adrenaline, but it won't last, Doc said and shook his head. Donnie charged and tried to swing the saw at Doc, but lost his grip mid-swing, and the saw dropped helplessly to the ground. He tried to ball up his fist for a backswing, but his legs gave out and he fell back to his knees in the snow. Doc looked him right in the eye. That would be the deer cum working. Stupid move, kid, and punched Donnie in the face. He fell onto his back in the snow. Get over here and hold him down, he called to his partner. Donnie watched on in horror as Doc started to saw with a renewed vigor in his chest. As he lost feeling, a peaceful smile crossed his face. At least he didn't have to face his family after all these years. Or worse yet, hers. The beeping of the machines kept Mary awake. She wouldn't leave her daddy's side, even though things looked grim for him. She had been praying like Mommy asked her to do for weeks, and nothing had changed. She even wrote a letter to the North Pole to ask Santa for help 2 days ago. It was Christmas Eve, and she watched as machines kept her daddy alive. There would be no joy, no cheer, nothing this Christmas. The doctor walked in. He handed her a cup of ice cream, the kind that came with the little wooden spoon, and smiled. Mary, I have some good news about your daddy, he said after glancing at her mom Stacy in the one chair in the room. We found a match. Your daddy is going to get a new liver. It should be here in a few hours. Why don't you two go get some sleep, and we'll let you know when we're ready to go, he said. Mary yawned. Daddy's going to be okay? Yes. It's a Christmas miracle, Stacy said, and took her daughter's hand. Thank you, Doctor. That's great news. Stacy kissed her husband on the forehead and headed for the door. Mary let go of her mom's hand, which made her turn around. Come now, Mary, she said. But Mom, someone is there with Daddy, she said. Just the doc, her mom replied, and pulled Mary out the door, who was looking over her shoulder. After everyone left from behind the curtain, a pointed green hat peeked out and patted the husband's foot on the bed. You're gonna be okay, fella. The small figure jumped down onto the floor and carried his black bag with him out into the hall, unnoticed by all. Well, my spookies, you survived yet another marathon of horrors with a holiday theme to it. But don't worry, there's one more coming very soon, as well as all of the brand new holiday horrors awaiting you right here at Weekly Spooky. Every year we give you plenty to enjoy at Christmas and Halloween, so make sure you're subscribed and go to weeklyspooky.com for everything else, and I'll see you before you know it. Ho, ho, ho.